to a tropical storm, but that does not mean it still does not pack quite a punch. Still some very heavy rainfall moving across parts of south and southeast Texas. Some of that will eventually move into more southwestern Louisiana. We are going to be spared any kind of torrential rainfall. We will see some rains as we head into more Monday through Thursday, but not anywhere near what the folks in parts of Texas are already seeing and unfortunately will continue to see for the next several days. There is not going to be a whole lot of motion from Harvey for the next 5 days at least, and even some of our long-range computer models say that we will probably still be talking about at least the remnants of Harvey by Friday and even into next weekend, probably still sitting across somewhere in Texas. Here's the latest satellite, and this is our high-resolution GO-16. This image is updated every minute. It's incredible, but it also shows you that this is still, even though more than now 12 hours inland, a very well-defined and strong storm. As I mentioned, winds have been downgraded to 70 miles an hour, so it is now a tropical storm, but still a very powerful system. Heavy rainfall associated with Harvey has been moving inland, and because of the rotation, just the nature of these tropical systems, we're going to continue to see basically in the eastern sector and generally usually kind of the northeastern sector of these storms, tornado warnings issued. Just the rotation of the storm itself lends itself to developing these kind of tornadic storms. So that'll be something we watch. Again, staying well off to our west. Look at some of the rainfall totals. Now, these are radar estimates, not actual totals. I was able to find, at least in one location, upwards of 14.5 inches, and the rains associated with Harvey are just getting started. So we were showing you some of our computer models of over 20 inches. That may be, unfortunately, kind of underestimating the amount of rainfall that those folks in Texas could potentially see once Harvey is gone. 70-mile-an-hour winds right now, still a lot of convection, very heavy rainfall with strong winds in especially the center, but also in some of those outer bands near the center of Harvey. Pressure has been coming up steadily at 987, but according to the Hurricane Center and based on computer models, we are not going to see a whole lot of motion. So this is from today to 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Basically, absolutely no motion of the center of Harvey. Going into Monday morning, Tuesday morning, still very little motion. Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, finally starting to see a little bit of a more northward tug of the center of circulation, but not a great deal of motion, and that still puts very heavy rainfall going into the end of next week across eastern Texas as well as parts of southwestern Louisiana. Again, it looks like the storm is going to stay far enough to our west that we're not going to see the torrential rainfall here. Definitely some rainfall. Now, this is what some of the computer models have been indicating. Notice the GFS, not a great deal of motion over the next several days, basically staying in South Texas. But notice the GFS actually takes the storm more into South Texas and eventually moving more toward, at least what is left of it, northern Mexico. The European model, and we're still waiting for the complete 12Z run, the most updated model run of the European to come in. But it's been the European that kind of lifts Harvey more toward northern Texas at that same time frame. Remember, the GFS by 1 o'clock on Saturday afternoon has the system kind of a remnant feature and moving into northern Mexico, whereas the European still has a little bit of organization perhaps, but more moving into northern Texas, which would keep us on the wet side for perhaps a little bit longer. But notice, widespread rainfall totals, the GFS has roughly 3 inches of rainfall. The European, about the same. Now, the European has a lot more over the Houston and parts of southeastern Texas area than the GFS does, but point is, we're not looking at widespread torrential downpours here. If we see any kind of banding feature set up over southeast Louisiana or individual cells associated with Harvey, we could see some minor localized flooding. Now, that heavy rain of 5 to 10 inches, that would be under a band of storms where you get the training effect of rainfall, or perhaps underneath some heavy downpours where you don't get a whole lot of storm motion associated with Harvey, could produce 5 to 10. Widespread, not anticipating that much rainfall. And even if we saw 5 inches of rain over a 7-day time span, that really isn't anything that we cannot handle under normal circumstances. Normal circumstances being that the pumps are at full capacity in Orleans Parish and we know they're not. So we may see some minor flooding, especially in Orleans Parish and elsewhere. Just depends on where those outer bands set up, if we see any kind of structures like that happening. Coastal flooding is also a almost given, just with the strong southeast and easterly winds that we're going to see over the next several days. Coastal flooding with winds out of the south and southeast are going to increase tides to about 2 to 4 feet above normal. So coastal flooding is likely. Also, if we do see any of those outer bands setting up, I was just showing you that with the just motion of a hurricane or a tropical system, that spin tends to lend itself to some minor, usually weak, short-lived tornadoes. So that'll be something that we'll have to watch as well as we get into next week. Once again, not a great deal of steering with Harvey. You see the outflow in the upper parts of the atmosphere. In other words, you think of it as a chimney. A chimney only works if you have a clear chimney and flue where smoke is able to rise and escape. Well, that's basically what happens in the upper atmosphere. You have a big upper level high that is sitting over Harvey, and that allows it to continue to expand. So even though it's not over water and it will continue to weaken, it is still drawing a lot of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, which is why the heavy rains have only just gotten started across Texas. Here's what it looks like in the computer model image simulation of the upper atmosphere. You don't see a whole lot of motion from Harvey because you've got two areas of an upper high on either side of Harvey. Looks like that upper trough that tries to dive in from the Great Lakes does not pick up Harvey. So this is based on the GFS. GFS has that trough lifting northward without picking up Harvey, which is why we're likely just going to see it kind of meander and eventually dissipate. Now, the Euro appears to kind of pick up on perhaps that upper trough or maybe the upper ridge building in from the east and forcing Harvey northward. We'll just have to wait and see which exactly one of those turns out to be the case, maybe neither one. But right now there is not a whole lot of steering, and certainly won't be, at least through Wednesday, for Harvey. So at least through the middle of next week, we're looking at Harvey just basically remaining rather stationary. Still a very well-defined storm and a lot of rainfall headed to folks in Texas. Again, impacts for us. A lot of folks are worried about that. We are looking at some potentially at times heavy rainfall. Rain chances today at only about 40%. We'll see that increase to around 60%, but more so rain chances associated with Harvey not until Monday, and that will likely last until Thursday. Not going to be a constant rain. We're not looking at the rain shield where it's just a expansive rain over a huge area. That's not what we're anticipating over southeast Louisiana. We will see frequent breaks, more often on type shower development. And if we do see any of those banding type features where the showers and storms just continue to move over one particular area, then we could see some minor flooding. Again, not expecting it to be widespread. So rainfall, coastal flooding, areas outside of the levee protection system, you are going to see some flooding. Another problem is we're likely going to see those winds sustained out of the southeast and east kind of going beyond the end of next week, maybe into next weekend. So we're not going to have a quick reversal of winds, which would help to start draining all of that water. So lake waters and coastal waters will likely stay high for maybe even beyond 7 days. So rainfall, coastal flooding, and also the risk of maybe some weak, short-lived tornadic activity if some of those outer bands make it to southeast Louisiana. I'm going to jump back over to our radar just to give you an idea of how close some of those outer bands are right now. Notice, we do have some rainfall, and I guess you could kind of say that this is associated with Harvey. Not exactly a feeder band. The feeder bands are probably as close as, say, Cameron and Vermilion Parish, but we do have some rainfall moving across parts of southwest and south central Louisiana. We've had a few little showers popping up here. Again, kind of following the overall flow around Harvey. Tough to say if these are exactly associated with Harvey. We're getting kind of the pop-up shower and thunderstorms that we tend to see every August afternoon. But some of the heavier rains that are moving across south central Louisiana, that's probably about as close. So Lafayette would be about as close as I would say any of the rainfall really directly associated with Harvey is to us. Maybe parts near Franklin, maybe kind of the Morgan City area. You could say some of that rainfall is associated with Harvey. But the point is, we'll have some scattered showers today, some scattered showers as well tomorrow. maybe a little bit more numerous tomorrow. But our 70 to 80% rain chances set in by Monday and will likely continue on through Thursday. So that's the very latest with Harvey. Again, we are looking at a very well-defined storm, even though it is weakened to a tropical storm. Those strong winds and, more importantly now, the heavy rainfall is still going to batter folks in Texas for the next several days because there just is not going to be a great deal of motion with Harvey. We'll have another update from the National Hurricane Center at 4 o'clock and new forecasted track and all coming up later on this evening. And we will have the very latest, updating you on social media, on our website, wwltv.com, and, of course, all the information, the latest information on WWLTV at 5, 6, and 10 o'clock. For now, I'm meteorologist Chris Franklin in the Pinpoint Forecast Center.